I'm hoping we're live because in the back end it's not showing us as live. So can anybody see us?
I see live on my screen here. Live 50 seconds.
I've got live on my screen, so I'm just waiting for people to confirm that we are actually. Are we actually live, people? Can you see us? Yay! Right. So sorry about the beginning of that. Welcome to PTS, the Discord YouTube channel. As you can see, I've got my guest here again for part 2 with Patty Moher. Tonight we will be talking about her time in OSA, and we will be talking about various other things as well. I do want to make a brief statement. I will not be saying any more than this. If anybody is watching who is expecting me to react to what happened on Thursday night, I am not going to be talking about it. And that is my final statement on it. So let's grab the towels. Let's dive straight into the best pool on the internet with Patty Moher. So, Patty, before we begin, in case we have got other viewers in who weren't here for part 1, do you want to just give us a brief overview of who you are and what you did in Scientology?
Sure. So I originally got into Scientology in 1973 through their Knock It On program. I became a staff, and then I became the executive director of that program. All still while smoking pot, of course. Eventually, I was recruited into the Guardian's office, and I worked there for a few years. Left the Guardian's office. After I left, I continued. The Guardian's office reformed into the Office of Special Affairs. And when my son went to school, he was probably about 1989, 90. I started working for the Office of Special Affairs as a volunteer. I actually got paid for some work, but most of it was a volunteer effort. And I stayed in Scientology until around 1999, 2000, at which point I left and became a critic and an outspoken protester of the cult, and did a lot to expose them for many years. And I'm back and telling my story, because I've never really told my story. I think I've sort of told it in pieces here and there, not on video, certainly, in different news groups or forums. So that's what I'm here. This part 2, I wanted to specifically talk about my time as working for OSA and who OSA is.
Absolutely. And before we started, we were talking, and you did say there was something you wanted to say about second gens, etc., before we went in too deep. So do you want to get that out?
Yeah, it's not so much second gens, but all ex-Scientologists. I noticed, and what this interview is going to include is what I have done, or what I have done as a Scientologist. I love watching ex-Scientology videos, interviews, and what happened to them, and them giving out information about what happened inside and who did this. But it's always, almost always, there are only a handful of exes who have actually said what they've done to others, what harm they did while they were in Scientology. Certainly working for the Office of Special Affairs is something that I did to harm others. I mean, it was part of the whole thing. And it was the worst part of Scientology. But I just wanted explained, wherever you were in Scientology, I'm talking about staff, well, in public too. If you were throwing large amounts of money at Scientology, that's something you did. You should say that. You should take responsibility. If you were an auditor in Scientology, you harmed people, whether you think so or not. You were contributed to their mental illness, to making them even weirder and more delusional and processing lies. If you were a course supervisor, you were training people to use Scientology, and it messed up their life. If you were a letter writer, you got people back in. If you were a field staff member, you recruited people and got them in and caused them to lose money. So everybody is just not a victim when you're in Scientology. People did things that were wrong, and nobody really likes talking about that. So I'm going to talk about that with you tonight. I'm going to tell you all the crappy things I did in the name of Scientology and clearing the planet and making this place a better world, with the quote from L. Ron Hubbard, something like, "We build the world on broken straws," which is supposed to be the justification on why we do horrible things, because we build the world on broken straws. So I'm here to tell you that part of healing, at least for me, was owning what I did and taking responsibility for my behavior. So anyway, ask me a
And
question.
I just wanted to bring this comment up from our very own Dings. Patty is amazing, and I don't feel there's anybody who would disagree with that.
Oh, good. I like that.
So, last time we spoke, we did go over your time in the Guardian's office. So, if memory serves, a lot's happened in the last week, so it might not serve very well. After you finished working for the Guardian's office, did you remain in Scientology, or did you leave for a while and then come back?
No, well, I wasn't active. I never left officially or even unofficially. I was always around. I would go to events. I would attend events. Eventually, I ended up putting my son in Delphi Academy in Boston. Horrible, horrible thing I did. And because of that, and my husband at the time, my ex now, but my husband at the time, when this was all going on, excuse me, was the executive director of the Boston Day Org. He was very popular too, and people like Bobby. He was a good guy, and they destroyed him. But after my son he was in school, and I didn't have to be home with him, and I had a job where I could do things, make my own hours, kind of. I was asked by Mary Frances. Her name is Mary Frances Stetson Newey, Newey. She was running OSA Boston at the time, and she needed help. And she and I were friendly, and she knew I was, a diehard Scientologist in my heart, and would pretty much do anything that was needed to be done for the cult. And she asked me to come help work in the Invest unit. And so I said, sure. It was on a volunteer basis at that point. And basically, when I first went in, it was all about filing. They sort of go through. They didn't put me directly into doing covert ops. They had me doing what's called overt data collection, which I think we mentioned in the last one, where you go and you get public records of everybody. That's the first thing you do on anybody who's being a pain in the ass to Scientology. Is you set up a file on them, and you try to get all public information. And of course, back in the 90s, there's no internet, so I'm running around to courthouses and records in Massachusetts. There were public records division. You just basically went and collected hard data, where now you can pay for a company and give you all the dirt on somebody in like 30 seconds. So they don't have to waste the time that they would have to put in personnel back in the day. So I did that for a couple of years. I just would go to courthouses and collect information. They'd give me a guy's name, and it was pretty much all over Massachusetts, some New Hampshire, some Connecticut, but mainly Massachusetts at the time. And then, so that was that. I was setting up files on people and collecting information. And what they would do with that information is, and what they're looking for, there's two things they're looking for. They're looking for all your, what they call comm lines, your communication lines. Who are you talking to? Who do you know? Who are you friends with? And ultimately, believe it or not, they're really looking for who is the psychiatrist behind what you're doing. This is like the whole crazy psychiatry thing they got going on. And so it's always, because L. Ron Hubbard says there's always a psych at the bottom of it.
So the people that you were getting the information on, were they public or were they people in Scientology?
No, they were outside. They were not, I was on the external side. So I didn't do investigations on internal Scientologists. That was Mary Frances did all that stuff. I was completely just external. The only internal stuff I did was file information about what's going on staff, or this guy's doing this and this guy's drinking too much or whatever. I would know about that stuff. But as far as collecting the information internally, no. I was specifically working on people who are attacking or saying bad things in the newspaper, in the media, or just in general. There was something going on with them that they were protesting, however, whatever it may be.
So for an example, if like in this day and age with YouTube and stuff like that, if Scientology accidentally came across our little YouTube channel, they'd be sending somebody out like you back in the day to find information on me.
Yes, absolutely. They want to know who you are, you know, why are you doing this? And they assume the only reason you're doing this is because, one, you have crimes, and anybody who has crimes won't like Scientology, and two, a psych has caused you to do this, like they're like influencing you some way, because that's per Hubbard, that's the reason why. And so some poor bastard who makes a comment and let it to the editor, all of a sudden he's got a file on him, you know. And what happens with a lot of people when you do this, not everybody obviously, but when you know a Scientology all of a sudden is investigating you, many people just don't want to deal with that. They'll just shut up. It's like, okay, I'm not talking about them anymore, and they'll just clam up and not say anything about Scientology any further. Even exes, you'll see that. There's a lot of exes who don't want to talk because they know Scientology's got dirt on them. Or even if they don't know, even if they don't have the dirt, they just don't want the hassle that Scientology is going to bring them by being out front and going after them. So a lot of people instantly, you don't even know how many people Scientology, none of us know how many people Scientology has silenced, because they're silenced. We don't know about it anymore. But the big ones, you can tell there's major players that were once in Scientology. They're not talking. And not because they signed forms or papers about it. They're terrified. They know what Scientology do with them.
Pete's just said the whole anti-psychiatry museum they have makes so much more sense now.
Oh yeah, it's all about. There's always evil psychs behind every person, and that's what they're digging for. And it's funny.
So
I always figured they wondering about me.
So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. You were saying that you were going to come clean about some of the stuff that happened when you were in.
Correct.
So let's dive into it, because it sounds like it could take a while.
Yeah, well, you know, it's certain actions. Some of the things. Eventually, they put me on covert ops, which is going into groups. I infiltrated groups. I infiltrated meetings. We'll get specific. But the first thing they had me do, and any old timers around from the early or the late 90s, maybe mid to late 90s, there was a protester in Boston. Can't think of his name now. Some Scazmat. Scazmat was his name. Anonymous protester, really nailing the crap out of Scientology. He was posting on Alt Religion Scientology, which is a message group back then. And the church could not figure out who he was. So they sent me in over to Boston University to sit in a computer room and watch people to see and take notes who's in there, because apparently this guy, they figured out that this guy was posting from the BU computer room, and like anybody at BU could use it. And I went in, I think I went in a couple of times on that. And I got feedback years later that they all knew I was from Scientology, looking for the guy. But anyway, that's the first thing. They wanted me to find out who this guy was. We never found out. I didn't know who it was. There were like people coming in and out of this room all the time. There was no way to actually nail it. We didn't have a picture of him or a description. But once I did that, I was sort of trusted to do other things. Specifically, I infiltrated CAN meetings. CAN was the Cult Awareness Network, which was kicking Scientology's butt back in the day, really exposing them, doing a lot of like parents would call and ask for questions about what Scientology is, and CAN, the Cult Awareness Network, would inform them. They would send them brochures and information and tell them where to go. And again, this is for the internet. So people were upset that their kids or their family members were in the cult, but they didn't know what is this thing. And Cult Awareness Network was a source that Scientology had to destroy. So, and they eventually did destroy it. But I would go to, they would have these meetings, different, just like get-togethers, and have speakers. And I would get sent in there as a concerned citizen or something, and just take notes. Who was there, what they were saying, not participate, just information. And the reason they trusted me to do this is because, again, I was completely and utterly indoctrinated into this. And doing so, it was also a test. Can I go there and infiltrate this place successfully without blowing it? And so I would do that a few times. And then the next is they had me infiltrate a what they called the Squirrel Group. There were some exes from the Boston area who were setting up their own sort of mission of Scientology without the church's permission. So they were basically they're getting paid to deliver Scientology, and Scientology is not getting a cut. So that means we have to close them down, because Scientology wants their cut. If Scientology figures if these guys want to practice, they should become a mission, or they should sign some papers, so we get 10% of all their money. And if you don't do that, then obviously you're a squirrel. That's what a squirrel is, someone who practices Scientology outside of the church and alters it. And anyway, you're there with me. It disappeared for a minute. So anyway, I infiltrated them and pretended I hated the church but loved Scientology. I mean, it was really awful. And this group was also connected with a guy called David. Damn, I can't remember his last name. He was like the number 2 in Scientology back in the day. And they had to get rid of these squirrels. You know, this was a huge problem for them. So I did that for a couple of years and collected basically who's there. They want to know who's there, what kind of money's there. I got their mailing list, turned it over to the cult. Just shitty things to do to a group. People who granted, Scientology takes all a bunch of crap, but still they wanted to just do that. And my job was to stop that, because they were altering Hubbard's technology. So that went on for 2 years, and then eventually they blew it. They outed me. The church freaking outed me and caused problems because they wanted to they wanted them to stop. So they sent them a cease and desist letter and included like all the shit that I knew, and I could be the only one to give them that stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, you're blowing my cover here. You're exposed. Nah. They knew best. So I stopped doing that. I'm curious. Can anybody see me? Am I talking to anybody? Well, I'll just keep talking. The next thing was harassment of Bob Minton. Bob Minton was a guy back, late 90s, millionaire, multimillionaire, got a bug that wanted to destroy Scientology. Something really pissed him off. He saw something they did. And let me just see something here, guys.
Apologies, my whole laptop crashed.
What happened? Your laptop crashed.
I just suddenly got a black screen and everything went dead, and it was like, ah!
That's all right. I kept blabbing along.
I know. I logged into YouTube on my phone just to put a message in the chat saying my laptop crashed, and everybody was like, "No, Pat, he's doing great. You're fine."
Yeah, I knew. I figured something like that happened. Like, that's usually something that happens to me, or I crash it.
Apologies.
No problem.
I missed all of that.
Oh, that was just the infiltration part. That's kind of boring. So I was gonna.
But I did see a comment from Dings while I was while I was trying to get back on.
Okay.
And she was saying that the whole Can thing, taking down Can, was such a big thing for Scientology.
Oh, huge! Because again, Can was really kicking their butt, and this is again before the internet. But what they did, how they got rid of Can, is, let me get this straight. I'm sure there's an article about it somewhere. But basically, how Scientology eventually got rid of Can is they had different Scientologists, like hundreds, file suit against Can, and basically bankrupted, so that all their assets were then put up and Scientology bought them, which included all their files and their office equipment, everything they owned, and all the information that they had. So by bankrupting Can, they totally set it all up. It was all planned out. This is, Scientology is the type, like, if you're going to take them on, don't underestimate their legal machine. These guys have billions of dollars. And one person coming in and trying to mess up their operation, they can throw millions at you, millions worth of legal fees, and just grind you into the ground until you call uncle. And that's what they do to critics who they really, truly want to get rid of. If they play the long game, if they can get you to silence quickly through blackmail, like they know and dirt on you and threatening you to shut up, they will. But if they don't, they'll keep digging and digging and digging and digging and making your life miserable until you go silent. And, certain SPs are more important than other SPs, like, guys like Ortega, Bob Minton at the time. There's been always top SPs that they spend most of their money on covering 24/7. Leah Remini, Mike Rinder, when Marty was out. I mean, the big players, I'm sure they even follow Jesse Prince still. And there's been information like when David Miscavige's father was out, he had PIs 24/7. I think there was another fellow who they befriended him. Was it Mark Fisher? Maybe Oh no, it was the guy who was security at the Int base. Some guy befriended him for like 10 years. He was his friend. They used to go fishing together or something. He was all reporting back to Scientology. So, you don't underestimate them. And when it seems like they're not doing anything, or somehow you're having a big effect on them.
Was it Jackson?
No.
Jackson. Was it Jackson?
Jackson? Yes, Jackson. That's the one. You can imagine the guy had a friend for 10 years. He didn't even know it, that the guy was reporting back to Scientology. I mean, so when I say my part in it was, like I said, data collection. I did infiltrate to collect information. When Bob Mitten became part of the scene, he was from Boston. So I was asked to do a series of things for him. And I'm going to give you some examples of how far they'll go. Bob Mitten had to be covered 24/7, literally. And so at one point, something happened where somebody was sent out or something. So they needed me to go to the airport, Boston Airport, Logan, and sit there and make sure that Bob Mitten got on the right plane. They already knew where he was going. Let's say he was going to Clearwater. I think that's where he was going. They knew he was going to Clearwater because they have travel agents, or they have a source that can get Bob Mitten's flight plans or anybody's flight plans from them. And then they use that information to follow. So now they'll have a PI waiting for the Bob Mitten or whoever it is they're following at the other end and continue to follow him. So they always know where he is, because the reason for doing that is they need to know who he's talking to, who his connections are. Is he seeing a psych? And so I know. So I was sent just to, that was my job that day. Just go to the airport, sit there. All right, Bob Mitten shows up. I know what he looks like. He sits there. He's looking around for somebody. He don't know it's me. I'm an old lady sitting. Well, back then I wasn't quite that old, but I'm just a woman sitting there reading a book, watching him. And he gets on the plane. And as soon as he gets on the plane, I leave and I go back to OSA. And at the time, the guy running OSA was a guy named Gerard Renner, Renna. Gerard, you can find videos of him. Mark Bunkers made videos of him. Gerard, OT8, not a real smart guy, but definitely gung-ho Scientology all the way. So I go in and I said, yeah, Gerard, he got on the plane. He said, well, did you see the plane take off? And I'm like, no, you didn't tell me to stay to watch the plane take off. He's like, it's not a done. It's not a done. And he starts yelling at me because I didn't stay and watch the plane take off. It's like, well, you just told me to want to make sure he got on the plane. It's like, well, you should have known better. It's like, yeah, all right. So I didn't really work with
you were in Scientology. Everything was done as you were told to do it.
Right, exactly. It's very literal. Go do this and don't do anything else. And so,
sorry, I'm just laughing at this comment from Pete. Surprised his OT8 powers didn't allow him to know he got on the plane himself.
There you go. If there were really OTs, we wouldn't be here, right? So, yeah. So that was just one example. Another example that they had me do. So again, where he had to be 24/7, he and his wife were at a place at St. Bart, somewhere down in the Caribbean. And again, they had to know where he was on St. Bart's. So they had me. And again, nothing is done without drilling. You have to sit with nothing's done off the cuff. You practice what you're going to do when you're sent in to do one of these things. So you drill for as long until you got it down how you're supposed to do it. So what they have me do is call up Bob Mitten's travel agent and pretend to be a friend of his wife's and saying, "Oh, I heard Bob and Teresa are down in St. Bart's. And you know what? My husband and I want to rent the same place that they're staying at in a couple of months. What's the name of that place?" That was all drilled out. I get the name of the place. Scientology then sends people down to St. Bart's with flyers about what an asshole or what a terrible person is Bob Mitten is. And of course, it's horrible harassment. I mean, the guy can't even go on vacation, but that's the whole point. The point is to constantly keep pressure and harassing this guy until he cries uncle. And it took a lot for him to cry uncle. He eventually did. He eventually gave it all, turned everything he had over to Scientology and cried uncle because they got him. They got him on something that he was doing. But it took years. So again, that's to prove so that's my participation in it, was helping to harass this guy. I'm trying to think what the other one. Oh, stealing trash. Stealing trash in Scientology. They have a different name for it now. But back in the day, it was called the D line, like D for dog. I don't know where they got that from, but the whole purpose of the D line is to steal trash. Now that's when you're like, if you're stealing somebody's trash, they are like definitely high up on the SP list. And so there's a whole trash tech. There's a whole tech on stealing trash. And Mary Frances and I used to steal Bob Mitten's trash and Steve Hassan's trash, because he also lived in Boston. Well, Somerville, right outside of Boston. And the trash tech is basically that you swing by the house, and first you got to know what night's trash night. You find out what trash night is, and then about 2 or 3 in the morning, when everybody's asleep, you go right by the house. You see that the trash cans are out there. Once the trash cans are on public property, they're up for grabs. Now, as opposed to like a dumpster on a private property, you can't go into the dumpster because it's on private property. But if they put the trash out on the sidewalk, it's fair game. So we go by, we look in the trash can, you lift it up, and you see there's white bags with a red tie. So now you go in Mary Frances's trunk, park somewhere else. We pull out, she's got a variety of plastic bags, white bags with red ties, black bags with yellow ties, different sizes. We find out what bag to use. We then go steal somebody's trash we don't even know. We just go in and take the trash and put it in our trash. Drive back by the house, switch. So if we want 3 bags of trash, we go there with 3 bags of fake trash, white bags, red tie, trade them out. And so that when you go out the next day, maybe you're adding to your trash, you don't notice missing trash. Your trash is still there. You don't know your trash is getting stolen. Take the trash, throw it in the trunk. It's done real quick. And then go back. You can't bring the trash into OSA. You have to go somewhere else with it. So we go to, I don't know, I think it was Mary Frances's basement or something. And we start, put on the yellow gloves and start digging through the guy's trash. And what you're looking for is anything in writing: envelopes, return addresses, bills, credit card statements, phone bills, whatever you get. Because again, the whole idea is the more information they can collect about you and your contacts, the faster they can get you to shut up. So let's say they find out your mother's phone number. Well, you know what? Maybe if they start harassing mom will tell her son, hey, stop doing what you're doing because they're harassing me and I don't want this. And again, the person might back off. Bob Minton wouldn't back off, no matter what, until they got him. But that's, again, I'm trying to explain the mentality of why this is done. You're doing this because Scientology is mankind's greatest hope. And the only way to do that is get rid of the people who are trying to stop it, and get rid of them by even silencing them or get them in jail or whatever it's going to take for them not to bother Scientology.
I have one question with all of that. As fascinating as the story is, who wrote the dumpster drill?
I don't. Well, here's the thing. A link below that I sent you earlier. It's
Yes.
Xenu.net archives. For anybody interested, that link will keep you busy for days. That is the Guardian's Office technology, which the only difference between the GEO stuff and the OSA stuff is they changed the title on the top of the page to read Office of Special Affairs instead of Guardian's Office. That's all. They just changed the names. It's all the same stuff. And in that information on that link, it'll tell you all about OSA Invest. It'll show you their course that the OSA people would take, like including like the lock pickers half pack. You know, they would teach you how to. I never took that course, but I had parts of it were given to me to use, but I never was on an OSA contract where I would know all that stuff. But if they needed me to know something, they would show me the policy. I couldn't keep, nobody could keep it. They had it locked up in a safe in a closet and all this stuff. Like highly, they would hide. It's like eyes only type of stuff, very confidential.
I mean, the only reason I was asking that question is I'm trying to work out the mentality of somebody who sat there to write a policy on how to nick somebody's garbage.
Imagine, a lot of times with Scientology stuff, well, with OSA stuff, whoever wrote it may not have been. Well, no, a lot of times there was somebody was an assistant to somebody who approved by the LRH something or other unit. They would have all this like stuff that they said was approved, and it would list it. But then I believe they stopped doing that for a while, and they didn't want any names on anything, and they would handle that by, let's say I want to send you a report. Instead of writing on the report to Liam from Patty, I would staple a piece of paper on top of the report to, like this size, to Liam from Patty. And when you got it, you'd rip off the label. So there's no identifying who it's sent to and who it's sent from. So that came in after the raid, when the church was raided. And I don't know when. Back in the day, they were raided. That must have been late 70s, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that
78?
Just before or after Operation Snow White?
Yes, that was that exposed Operation Snow White. That raid that the FBI did on them, they were totally taken by surprise. They raided LA and DC, and they found out, they were infiltrating the government.
Just before Operation Snow White came to light, then. So
yeah. Well, I knew about it. That's why I get confused about who knew about it. I knew about Operation Snow White from being in the GO because we had briefings on it. No. So what were we talking? We were doing the
we were talking about the garbage drill. Yeah, the trash drill. Yeah,
the trash detail. So I've read reports from some of the older SPs who I just looked out my window and there's a guy running across my lawn with my trash. That's how he would find out about it. somebody would do it when the lights were up. It's probably they were in a rush and they grabbed it. They run by the front window, and that happened. I think it was Dave Turetsky, what a very big time SP. The church hated him, and he was one of those top of the line SP types. So they would steal his trash, and there's been other videos. I think maybe Rinder, I'm not really sure. Somebody was showing how the trash guys would come, throw it in the trash truck, and then drive down the street, take it out of the trash truck, and hand it to a PI.
I think that was it was either on Mike's channel or Mark Bunker's. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I know. I don't remember either. I mean, there's so many of these things. I truly, after all these years, have trouble figuring out who did who.
I'm now intrigued.
That's a big deal.
With this trash can, with this trash drill, was there a drill in place that if the owner of said trash was to catch you, was there a drill, or did you just leg it?
Oh no, you would drive it. No, there was nothing. If you got caught, I don't know if we had a story. We might have had a story. It could have been something like, oh, we're collecting bottles. Who knows? We could always make up something, or just tell whoever it was asking us, make up something. Just ignore them, or just don't talk about them, or don't say anything. I don't remember a specific response we were supposed to give because we weren't supposed to get caught. When you're doing it at 3 a.m. and you're driving around and you're double parking and you're just like quickly, the driver doesn't get out of the car. She opens the trunk for me and I go in, grab the stuff and throw it, or opposite whoever's driving, and you get out of there. It's like you're doing this in under like 10 seconds. It's like boom, 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 because you've driven around, you made sure everybody's asleep while the lights are out on the street. You've already known that nobody goes to work at that time in the morning because you've checked it out. I mean, it's done so you won't get caught. If you get caught, you're going to get in all kinds of crap. You don't want to get caught. So, go ahead.
I mean, I know we laugh and joke and we call the Sea Org the Space Navy and things like this, but it's all planned with military precision. It's madness.
Oh yeah. You drill and you practice and you make sure you got it down before you do anything so that you don't blow it. And stealing trash was, just part of that. That's a big data collection point, because again, they're just, so you go back and you find the stuff and you throw out what you don't need, people's cereal boxes or whatever, and you find anything in writing, and then you have to take each piece. You got the original and you copy it. Oh God, copy machines were just like we had copy machines up the wazoo. We were constantly copying stuff. Copying the original, then you keep that, and then you send the original up lines to OSA. It would be OSA US, who would then take it and send it up the lines to OSA INT, to a person whose job it was to have this information. It was usually somebody in the collections. It was like a paper pusher job. It wasn't, you sent this to the people who collected the files and filed them, rather than the person who does the management, because it's the way it's set up. You would send it up to the next level, and they would send it up to the next level as a report, so that everybody would know what's going on. But there was this one guy who was doing all the filing and keeping it all straight. And because there might have been other people collecting information, like Mary Frances was running the show, but she had me working with it, but she also had other people doing other tasks that I wasn't even familiar with, because as part of being an intel or a spy operation is it's very compartmentalized. People don't know what the other person is doing. And even I would be given a name to go do over data collection. I don't know anything else about it, or what that guy, why we're going after this guy, or what his story is. I only know what I know on my end, because they were so secretive with how they were collecting the information and what they were going to do with it. Everybody It was just very, very controlled, very controlled.
So, with that being said, and I don't know if you will be able to answer this because you were quite low on the totem pole, as it were. By the time all of that's gone up the levels, how much would the people right at the top of that totem pole have known?
Well, here's the way that works. So here I am in Boston, and I tried to explain this before. Scientology in the late 90s was huge. I mean, it was big. It was actually kind of booming. Not the late 90s, the late 80s, early 90s. And right up until, I'd say, maybe mid 2000s, like 2005, their stats, they were going up. They were getting people in. They were raking in a lot of money. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm looking at something over here. What was the question, Ian? I'm sorry, Liam.
How much would the people right at the top of the totem pole?
Okay, so let's try to visualize this, if you will. We got, I don't remember at the time, something like 174 orgs all around the world. Each one has their own little OSA. Under each of these orgs, there are missions. And there's also these narcodons and applied scholastics. There's this whole network of Scientology groups. And due to the fact that it's Scientology, I can assure you that there are flaps, or what they call hill tens, or just basically horrible situations in every group every week. Things are constantly, there's always problems. It could be an essay thing. It could be a child essay thing. It could be somebody's threatened to kill his wife. Somebody's on drugs on staff. There's always problems in Scientology. It's just because it doesn't work. And so what you get instead is massive problems and people trying to solve it with Scientology. So now here I am, and I'm in Boston, and I write up this report. Now, one thing that's very important in Scientology and sending information up lines is you never, ever send a problem to your senior. You only send solutions. So if we have a problem in Boston, let's say with the guy threatening to commit suicide, you don't send up the line and say, hey, this guy wants to commit suicide. What do you think? No. You send up a solution. All right, this guy wants to commit suicide. We got him on this program. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're having him sign all these documents, and it goes up the line as a done, or this is what we plan to do to fix it. Nobody up the line wants to know about how to fix a problem. They only want to know that it's a done deal. So you can imagine that the East U.S. is the West U.S. and Europe and Latin America and Australia and Taiwan and Christ almighty Russia, Africa, South Africa. All these people are sending up reports daily, and they're sending them by FedEx. And that's another thing. The way they would send them by FedEx, you had to do certain cuts in the FedEx package so that if anybody tried to open it, it would be obvious. They had rules for everything. But anyway, all this information is going up. And by the time an executive, no matter what division, whether we're talking OSA or whether we're talking the guy who's in charge of well-done auditing hours, all this information gets flooded, just flooded. I mean, lots and lots of paperwork flooded up the line. And on top, and I remember seeing this when I was at Worldwide, because I ended up going to England for Geo Worldwide for 6 weeks. What happens when the top guy gets it? This is how it looks. You get a pack of paper with reports underneath, and on top, there's like these one-liners, like PC, a pre-clear person, I don't know, threatened to sue, all handled. And so it's one line describing what the situation is, because this executive could spend the rest of their life reading these reports and never get through it, because there's so much going on and they don't want to know about problems. The problems are handled at lower levels, and only if it goes legal or it goes massively PR will top dogs get even involved. They got all kinds of other stuff going on, and they don't want to know the problems and that's just straight up Scientology policy. You do never present your senior with a problem. You only present them with solutions and dones. So yeah, I mean, some people, all kinds of crap happens that only a small group know about the day to day, because there's no way any human, especially before there's computers, keep track of all that stuff. There's no way. Yeah, it's impossible.
Even with computers, you'd struggle to keep track of it all.
Yeah, exactly. You would. If you go into any Scientology building and you look at and you go in their ethics office where ethics files are and where ethics reports are sent, I'm telling you, I've seen this so many times. It's ridiculous. But you go in there and there's stacks and reams of paper, of reports of what was happening internally. Oh, and that's a whole other thing. Internally is one thing, and then you have the external reports as well. So you got, as it goes up, you have internal, external, and usually there's people who do both. They don't cross over unless it happens to cross over. So internal stuff would go one direction, and external information would go another flow up the lines. But all the same policy still applies. You know, you want that guy like wants solutions from you. He doesn't want to know, or she doesn't want to know, except that it's taken care of.
That's what I was expecting the answer to be, but it as Ding says in the chat, never heard it explained as clearly as that.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
and Hans Christian Schwartz, they really know how to bureau crazy.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's just like, and it's like so top heavy in management. I think I said before, you got the course supervisor, you got the auditors, you got the executive director, and then you got like 30 people who are managing and sending orders into the org to do all this stuff. And sometimes they cross each other. Like one guy tells you to do this, and the other guy is telling you to do this. And it's like, I mean, it became so bad. I know at one point there was something it was talked about streamlining the executive flow channels of how things should work. You have to. I remember that coming out sometime probably in the 90s. So like, okay, we got too many cross orders going here. We got too many organizations, but that's the way it would. And then a mission would show up at your org. A mission would be 2 people from the Sea Org or 3 sent from the Sea Org to handle a specific problem. So let's say you have a guy at your org who's they want to recruit him for staff because they need somebody to recruit people or whatever it is. Well, this mission might go in to the local org and like just recruit people like crazy, and so awful. It's so stressful, the kind of pressure you would lock you in a room and try to pressure you. They didn't to me because I'd leave. I mean, I had a different kind of thing going on, but they wouldn't mess with me because I wouldn't allow it. And although the attempts were made, but the whole idea is to keep pressure on people in the org to constantly produce, and all these management bodies pushing at them. So it's so ineffective. I mean, the executives in org spend more time trying to handle orders than they do trying to take care of what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, it's that bizarre. And that's because Scientology doesn't work and because it's insane, and they do insane things like that. So yeah.
Want to say I will be opening up for questions in the next 5-10 minutes. So if you've got any questions in the chat, just put question and your question and we will get to them. So other than running around trying to get information on people, did you do anything else while you were in OSA, or was that what you did the whole time you were at OSA?
That was mostly that type of thing. There was one thing near the end when I started having some doubts about Scientology. You have to understand when I would, and this is the way they also operated, Mary Frances, if she needed me to do something, would call me on a landline. I don't think I had a cell back then. Call me on a landline and say, I need to talk to you. I then had to go and find a phone booth. I had to go to a hotel there were phone booths around then. So you could find a phone booth, like I would usually use the Holiday Inn, go in, and I would call her on a phone booth that I already had a couple of numbers of, and she would tell me to call this phone booth to that phone booth. So the two of us would make plans on the phone, through the telephone line, so that we couldn't be tracked. That's how far they would go on this. They were really paranoid. And the one thing that I refused to do, and when I started, because I knew OSA did funky stuff. I didn't know completely the extent, because I was never asked to do super weird stuff. I was just data collection on stuff. But I knew it existed. I just didn't know specifically. So Mary Frances calls me up and she says, well, we got something we want you to do. We want you to call Bob Mitten's wife, Teresa, and tell her that this woman, Stacy, has been sleeping in her bed with Bob. And I'm like, huh? Yeah, we want Teresa upset with Bob and causing him more heartache and problem than we're already causing him. So if we tell her that he's sleeping with Tracy, or is it Stacy? It's Stacy, in his bed, in her bed, that would be like awesome. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And I remember like, what? I said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And that was one of the last few things. They might have asked me to do a couple of things after that I might have done. But I was at that point thinking, I was starting to waver about the whole Scientology thing. The bricks were falling down in the wall that was built around me. And that was one of the things that pushed me over, or helped to push me over, because that was just, I know Bob's an SP per Scientology. This is my thinking at the time. I know he's bad, but his wife's not involved. And I don't want to do something mean to his wife. I'll do something mean to Bob Mitten, but I'm not going to mess with his wife. That's wrong. And plus he had a couple of children, teenagers, I think. I just didn't want to bring that on. Like, that just seems so creepy. And they stopped. After a while, I told them, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, I can't volunteer. It's causing me too much agita. It's I can't do it. I don't like it. It's too en theta. That was the word. En theta in Scientology is interbulated theta. It's like bad news, bad stuff, lots of evil and crap. I don't like the internet. And so I said, no, I can't do it anymore. And actually, when I said that, I was already out. I had been out probably for 6 or 8 months by then. And we can go in then part 3 when I tell you what I did when I left. But anyway, my point of telling this is that there are a lot of people who've done this and done volunteer work. Tori, as a matter of fact, is one of them. Tori Magoo. She is one of the people who have spoken out about some of the stuff she did for OSA. It's a guy named Frank Oliver. He released a lot of information and videos and stuff back in the day working for OSA. And there are a lot of people who did work for OSA, or even if they didn't, they did just some shitty stuff while they were Scientologists, and they don't talk about it. And I kind of was hoping that people might start talking about some of the stuff they've done to others while in
Oh,
Scientology.
I mean, absolutely, because just listening to the stories about what you had to do to Bob Minton and going through his trash and ringing up the travel agent to find out where they're staying in St. Bart's, or ringing up his wife to say he's having an affair with some woman. I mean, it just hearing the stories as somebody who was never in Scientology, just hearing the stories, I'm sat here thinking, why would anybody join something that's this batty?
Yeah, right. But by the time you're doing this stuff, you're gone. You're long gone in the indoctrination. You're filtering everything through the Scientology wall that's been built around you. So you won't look here, you won't look there, and you'll only do this. And because the straight and narrow in Scientology will cause you to go free, and stopping people who are trying to harm Scientology is best thing for the whole planet. And once you buy into all that crap, you just go right down the tubes and start buying more and more and more until you don't. And yeah. Anyway, I just want you to know.
I'll give you something, Patty. Even though you realised it was a completely nuts religion, you've had an interesting life.
I have. It's true.
There's not many people who would have been running around looking for the nearest phone booth, thinking they were spy versus spy.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't got any questions come up in the chat yet. So if anybody's got any, please put them in the chat, and I will get to them in a second.
Well, one thing I did want to say real quick on this again, what I was saying in the beginning, I'm telling the story now because, I think it's important for people to know this information. But for me personally, I've always felt so guilty. I mean, the guilt that I've carried with me for doing this kind of shit it's been awful. And part of my way of dealing with this is, well, you'll find out in the next version, but also just talking about it and telling people, yeah, I did this and I am so sorry. And I was so stupid. And
that was a question. Funnily enough, that was a question that was playing on my mind while you were talking about it, especially with the Bob Minton stuff. Did you ever get a chance to apologize to Bob personally?
I did. Well, I never got to see him. It may have been, I don't know where, I don't know if he was available then for me. I did write to him and I told him everything. And also Stacy. She was Stacy Brooks. She was big time. She was way up there in the organization in Scientology as well. And so I did write to them. And the other person, Steve Hassan, I wrote to him. And I actually had him at one of my SP parties. So and invited him to come and we made peace. Obviously, he was fine with what's gone on because I did come clean.
And that really does warm the heart that you had an opportunity to do that. And those people forgave because they understand that you were in this crazy cult that had brainwashed you into doing these crazy things. I mean, as an ordinary human being, I don't even like going through my own garbage if I've dropped something in there by accident. Never mind somebody else's.
Right. But it was really devastating. I have to tell you, for a lot of Scientologists, I think, especially that don't speak out, or how important it is to for therapy or for some kind of way where you can take a look at what you've done. Because like I said, I don't care who you were, whether you were public or not, you contributed to Scientology. You made them bigger. You made them better. You did all that yourself by whatever, financially or recruitment or dirty works or auditing or whatever it is. Scientology, to me, is just straight up evil stuff that Hubbard created. It's a con game. And suckers get pulled in and they get love bombed and they get treated. And it's like, oh man, I got the way out. I'm going to go free spiritually. This is so cool. And I got all this stuff going on. And yeah, it's all a con. There's not one good thing about it. Even if you think there's nothing good about this, because it's all based on, the reason this is good is because it's a step to get you to the next level, which is going to mess you up. So none of it's good in my book. None of it. I don't even care. Communication course, nothing. It's all meant to ultimately control you and get you to behave and do what they want for their further expansion so they can get money. It's a big, fat grift. And that's why I think I have so much passion when I see other Scientologists being harmed or any cult being harmed. Because you have to realize, and I think a lot of people do realize now, that people who are out of Scientology are prime for getting pulled into another cult, to get pulled into something because their judgment isn't so good. You just left a cult. So you might question your own ability to see things correctly until you've done some work. And there's nothing wrong with doing some work. It has to be involved with looking inward, seeing what happened, seeing what your part of it was, taking some responsibility for it. Whatever you need to do, but you don't need to just go push that behind you and not look at it, because that shit's there. And it's not going anywhere until you look at it and analytically decide how you're gonna deal with this in the future, how you're gonna take care of stuff, how you're gonna react to people. All of that, it's all built in. And until you spend some time, it's going to be there. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely.
It's a process.
So we have got a question from Dings. How did you feel about what you were doing while you were in?
Oh, I was proud. I mean, hey, listen, not everybody gets to work for OSA. And part of the embarrassing part about this is I actually liked it. I mean, I was having fun doing this, thinking that I was getting rid of SPs. That was, like, to me, a big deal, because not everybody was willing to confront evil, is the way it was going. OSA people, for you to work for OSA meant that you were willing to confront evil, and that you had a big confront level on this kind of stuff, where most Scientologists didn't want to be involved in that at all. They just wanted to do their services, and they wanted to do their auditing, and they wanted to go home, and they didn't want to get involved, and that wasn't their shtick. But for me, for some reason, at that time, I think it had to do with, I've always had this issue growing up about bullies. I think that may have part of it. And unbelievable that I end up turning into a bully by doing this job. It was very bullyish. But because I had such a big thing on people bullying others, and I still have that, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was helping Scientology. I thought I was, contributing to all of mankind. And I'll tell you, I look back at it now and it's like, oh God, what the hell did I do? But at the time I was, and I liked it, because the other thing is it gave me some juice. For instance, I was working for OSA, so I had like I was part of like a security team for events. So if I wanted to leave, nobody at the door was going to stop me because I was part of security. I was part of OSA. If there was a reg cycle I didn't want to be involved in, I got to leave. I'm part of OSA. So part of OSA is that you don't get, people don't mess with you as much, which in Scientology, you get messed with, you get pulled in for all kinds of stuff. But because I worked for that organization and they brought, there was mystery about it, what was done, it was all a big secret. So nobody would question me really. I could pretty much do anything. Nobody messed with me at the org. Plus I knew policy like cold. I could tell you, I was like one of these lunatics. If somebody came up to me and said, you need to do this, I could say, oh, no. Volume 7, page 343 says I don't. I mean, that's how crazy I was, and they're like, wow. So when you can quote policy at somebody like that.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hans Christian Schwartz has just said OSA equals Bond, James Bond.
Yeah. More like Get Smart. What was that guy on Get Smart with the shoe?
Absolutely. And for those that don't know, because we might have people watching who aren't up on the lingo, OSA stands for the Office of Special Affairs.
Right.
It's I suppose what you'd call the Scientology internal police force, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's their internal, external police force. They run the same way as pretty much any intel, secret organization, spy operation would work. A lot of these guys, I believe if you go to that website, you'll see the a check sheet, a course check sheet on all the stuff as a full-time OSA intel person on staff would do this course. There's all these books to read. There are all these spy books, The Art of War, and other things that involved intelligence gathering as part of the course, as well as, the lock picker's hat pack and how to do this and that, and things that are illegal or, shaky. Now, a lot of this stuff now, due to the shrinkage of OSA and due to the fact that so many people have left or will leave after they do funky stuff, all this is now done through PIs. OSA goes to legal goes to the attorney hires PIs. The PIs might hire one of their own staff, or to be really covered, they hire some jamoke to do the work for them undercover and report back to them, and church pays for the whole thing. But there's no way you can prove that Scientology or a Scientologist is involved. Plus, Scientologists aren't trustworthy to do the work. They screw it up because it's so screwy. They get in trouble, and that's, they bring bad repute onto the church. So the church can't have that. So they do everything through PIs now, everything.
Okay, so absolutely. And now we've got a question from Mrs. J. Does OSA in Oz, I suppose that could be any country really, know what OSA in the UK are doing?
No, not necessarily. I mean, maybe. No, they don't know. They're totally concerned with what they're doing in their sphere of influence. That's all. The only reason why they may know is because they need to take people from Oz and send them to the UK to help out. So Oz may be brief, like, oh, we got a big flap over in the UK and I need 3 people over there. Send me your top 3 people. I mean, that used to happen where I would get sent. I got sent to Miami once. They paid for the plane fare and they put me up at a hotel, and I had to do this, go to the courthouses and find stuff. So occasionally they will grab people and send them here and there, and that's why they may know about it. But generally, no, it wouldn't. It's not like they they include the group as to what's going on at all. The only time it would be, again, is if it affected Oz, because the guy was leaving England and going to Oz. And then Oz would find out all about him. But as long as he's staying in England, they're not going to let Oz know about this because it's trouble.
Good. Right. Okay. So, just a comment from Jolene. Jolene, it takes a lot of strength to admit how you have hurt others and attempt to make amends for it.
Well, thank you. I think the next video we do is going to be all about my amends. And that's the fun stuff. No, really, once I left, and you'll see it, once I left, I was so pissed off that I just wanted to expose them. And that actually was enjoyable. It brought me much joy to take what I knew, what they taught me, and use it against them, to expose them. And, if everybody plays a role in the anti-Scientology community, we're all trying to do things, provide information, coordinate, work together to expose Scientology. And that's any contribution from anybody who does that in exposing what this place is like is that's valuable. Right now, so many people know about Scientology. It's like a household world. And that they're a kooky cult. That's when, I think if you survey just people on the street, what do you know about Scientology? Kooky cult? That's kind of what you get for a response.
Absolutely. Because no offense, but it is completely kooky.
It's nuts. It's nuts.
Completely bonkers.
It doesn't get any crazier.
We haven't got any other questions, so we'll tie part 2 up there, and then we will be back with part 3 at some point next week. Once again, thank you to everybody who's joined us. Please like the video, share the video. It is so important we get these stories out there. If we're going to bring this cult down quicker than it's already collapsing in on itself, we need to get these stories out there and get people to know what is happening and what has gone on internally. And the only way to do it is for people like Patty and others to be speaking out and telling their stories. So let's get it out there.
All right.
So
thank you.
Till next week. Don't forget your towels, because we are now closing, or we are going to be closing, the best pool. So thanks for joining us, everybody.